Captain Lee Hyun stared through the viewport of the exploration ship New Dawn as massive alien vessels emerged from the darkness of space around them. The ships were unlike anything humanity had ever seen, sleek black holes that seemed to absorb light itself, with strange glowing symbols running along their sides like veins of fire. "Sir, we're being pulled in by some kind of tractor beam," reported Navigator Kim Bo from his station. His voice was steady, but sweat beaded on his forehead. Peon nodded grimly. This was exactly what Earth's military leaders had feared might happen when they sent the first deep space mission beyond the solar system. The New Dawn was officially an exploration vessel, but Heian knew the truth. It was bait, designed to look innocent while gathering intelligence on potential threats. "All hands, prepare for boarding," Heian announced over the ship's communication system. "Remember, we are explorers seeking peaceful contact with alien civilizations, nothing more." The alien ships guided them into the belly of an enormous vessel that dwarfed Earth's largest space stations. As they were escorted through gleaming metal corridors by tall, four-armed creatures in dark armor, Heian noticed something troubling. The walls were decorated with what looked like trophies, fragments of ships, weapons, and other objects that clearly came from different worlds and species. They were brought to a vast chamber where hundreds of alien soldiers stood in perfect formation. At the center, on a raised platform, sat a creature that could only be their leader. He was twice the size of the others, with scarred skin that looked like dark metal and eyes that glowed with a cold, predatory light. "I am Supreme Admiral Thok of the Valkan Empire," the creature spoke, his words translated by devices attached to the human's ears. "You will tell me about your pathetic world." Engineer Park Soo, the youngest member of the crew, stepped forward before Heian could stop him. "We come in peace. We're explorers from Earth, seeking to make contact with other intelligent species." The alien leader's laugh echoed through the chamber like breaking glass. "Peace? How amusing. Do you know how many species have said those exact words to me? 47. Do you know how many still exist? 0. The human crew exchanged worried glances. This was not the diplomatic first contact they had hoped for. "Your world has been selected for incorporation into the Valkan Empire," Thokmar continued, rising from his throne. "We have watched your primitive attempts at space travel. We have studied your weak technology. You are nothing more than hairless animals who barely learned to leave your own planet." Communications Officer Yunda spoke up, her voice shaking slightly. "Our planet has done nothing to threaten you. We're just trying to learn about the universe." "Threat." Thakmer moved closer, his massive form casting a shadow over the humans. "You think I care about threats? I care about resources. Your world has water, metals, and land that we can use. Your species will make adequate slaves for our mining operations." Captain Heian felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. "And if we refuse?" The Supreme Admiral gestured to the walls around them. "Look carefully at these decorations. Each piece comes from a world that refused. The Kelthari had ships that could travel faster than light for 1,000 years. The Mordok had weapons that could destroy moons. The Vishtar had technology that could bend space itself. Where are they now?" He paused, enjoying the fear he saw in some of the human faces. "Gone, extinct, forgotten. Their worlds are now Valkan colonies. Their technology serves our empire, and their greatest achievements are trophies on my walls." Navigator Kim Bo swallowed hard. How? How many worlds have you conquered? "In the past 1,000 years, 3,412. Your Earth will be 3,413. Thakmer returned to his throne, clearly enjoying the human's shock. "You have 30 of your days to prepare for surrender. Send a message to your leaders. Tell them that resistance is not only futile, it is stupid." Captain Hyun straightened his shoulders. "I'll deliver your message. But I think you should know something about humanity." "Oh, and what is that?" "Little explorer, we don't surrender easily." The alien's laughter filled the chamber again. "How adorable. The primitive ape thinks it can fight an empire that spans half the galaxy. Tell me, human, what could your species possibly do against ships like these, against weapons that can crack planets, against an army that has never known defeat?" "I guess you'll find out," Heian replied quietly. Supreme Admiral Thakmer waved a dismissive hand. "Return them to their toy ship. Let them carry word of their doom back to their mudball planet. When we arrive in 30 days, I want them to understand exactly how hopeless their situation is." As they were escorted back to their ship, Engineer Park Soo whispered to Captain Heian, "Sir, they have no idea what they're dealing with, do they?" Heian smiled grimly as the New Dawn was released into space. "No, Park, they really don't." Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, Defense Minister Park Jin sat in a room that officially did not exist. The message from Captain Lee Hyun had arrived 3 hours ago, and now the most secret facility on Earth buzzed with activity that had been planned for 50 years. "Confirm the message one more time," Park said to the communications officer. "Confirmed, sir. The Valkan Empire has given Earth 30 days to surrender or face complete destruction." Park nodded slowly. Around him, dozens of screens flickered. 2. Life as dormant systems across the solar system began to wake up. What the aliens did not know was that humanity had been expecting this day since. They first looked up at the stars and wondered what else might be out there. Dr. Kim Sora, begin activation of all defensive systems, Park ordered. The woman at the main control station began typing rapidly. Lunar installations coming online. Asteroid belt stations responding. Mars orbital platforms are charging their weapons. For decades, the world had believed that humanity was focused on peaceful exploration and scientific research. Every space mission, every research station, every mining operation had been presented to the public as part of humanity's noble quest to understand the universe. The truth was far different. Admiral Choi Dae emerged from a secured elevator that went deeper underground than most people knew was possible. Sir, the Shadow Fleet is ready to deploy. All ships have been in position for the past 6 months. Park smiled grimly. The Shadow Fleet was humanity's greatest secret warships disguised as cargo vessels, research stations that were actually weapons platforms, and mining ships that carried enough firepower to level cities. Every human in space for the past 20 years had been part of the greatest deception in the species' history. What about the civilian populations? Asked Dr. Kim. They know nothing, and it needs to stay that way for now. Park replied, if word gets out that we've been militarizing space while telling everyone we're peaceful explorers, it could cause panic. The truth was that Earth's leaders had learned from history. Every time a civilization had been discovered by a more advanced one, the results had been disastrous. The Spanish had destroyed the Aztecs. Europeans had conquered Africa. Stronger groups always dominated weaker ones. Humanity had decided they would never be the weaker group. Sir, incoming transmission from Luna Base, reported the communications officer. On the main screen, Commander Omen appeared. He was officially in charge of Earth's largest research facility on the moon. In reality, he commanded the most heavily armed fortress in the solar system. Minister Park, all lunar weapons are online and ready. The aliens will have no idea what hit them when they arrive. Good. What about the asteroid belt installations? Captain Yang Bo reports that all mining stations have dropped their disguises. We have 47 fully armed battleships positioned throughout the belt, all appearing to be simple mining operations. Dr. Kim looked up from her console. Sir, I'm receiving reports from all our deep space monitoring stations. The Vulcan fleet is massive, over 300 ships heading toward Earth. Expected, Park replied calmly. Our intelligence suggested they would bring overwhelming force. They're used to fighting primitive species that have only basic weapons. Admiral Choi pulled up a holographic display showing the entire solar system. Red dots marked human installations, while blue dots showed incoming alien ships. They're following standard Vulcan tactics, massive frontal assault designed to break enemy morale immediately. Which is exactly what we've been planning for, Park said. They expect to find a few orbital defense satellites and maybe some desperate military ships. Instead, they're going to find that we've turned our entire solar system into one giant weapon. Dr. Kim began reading from her screens. All fusion reactors are at full power. Railgun batteries on Luna are charged and ready. The Jupiter orbital stations report full readiness. Even the research station on Europa has armed its defensive systems. What about our people throughout the galaxy? Park asked. Lieutenant Namjoon reports that our deep space reconnaissance ships are in position near key Vulcan installations. They still think our ships are just harmless exploration vessels. Park stood and walked to the large display, showing Earth from space. To anyone watching, it looked like a peaceful blue world with a few space stations and satellites. They could not see the massive weapon systems hidden beneath the planet's surface, or the fact that every satellite was actually part of an integrated defense network. 50 years ago, when we first detected signs of intelligent life beyond Earth, our leaders made a decision, Park said to the room. We would prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. We built weapons while talking about peace. We trained soldiers while sending out scientists. We created the most powerful military force in human history while convincing everyone, including ourselves, that we were peaceful explorers. Admiral Choi checked his watch. The Vulcan fleet will arrive in 28 days. Then we have 20 days to complete our preparations. Park replied, send a message to all station commanders. Operation Thunder is now active. Every human installation, every ship, every weapon system is to be ready for immediate combat. Dr. Kim looked worried. Sir, what if we're wrong? What if they're more powerful than we expect? Park smiled coldly. Then humanity will go down fighting. But I don't think we're wrong. The Vulcans have spent centuries conquering primitive worlds. They've never faced a species that spent decades preparing specifically to fight them. The Vulcan invasion fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system like a dark storm cloud blocking out the stars. 312 warships arranged themselves in perfect formation, their black holes gleaming with the promise of destruction. Supreme Admiral Thakmer stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the small blue planet that would soon belong to the Empire. Primitive world, sneered his second-in-command, War Commander Vec. Look at their pathetic defenses. A few orbital stations and some tiny satellites. This will be over in minutes. Thakmer nodded with satisfaction. His sensors showed exactly what he expected. A handful of space stations around the planet, some communication satellites, and what appeared to be mining operations in the asteroid belt. The humans had not even tried to evacuate their world or hide their population centers. Begin the advance, he ordered. Standard intimidation formation. I want them to see their doom approaching slowly. The massive fleet began moving toward Earth, their weapons charging with energy that could turn entire continents to glass. This was how the Vulcan Empire had conquered thousands of worlds. Overwhelming force applied with precision and cruelty. On the hidden command station, buried deep within Luna Base, Captain Omin watched the alien fleet approach through sensors that the Vulcans could not detect. Around him, dozens of officers sat at control stations, their faces calm despite the enormous fleet bearing down on them. All lunar batteries report ready, said Lieutenant Lee. Our railgun systems are charged and locked onto target. Asteroid belt stations are in position, reported Communications Officer Park Bo. Captain Yang Bo confirms that all mining ships have weapons ready. Omin smiled grimly. The aliens had no idea what they were flying into. For 50 years, humanity had prepared for this exact moment. Every piece of equipment in the solar system had been designed to look harmless while hiding devastating weapons. Wait for them to reach the kill zone, Omin ordered. Let them get close enough that they can't retreat. The Vulcan fleet continued its approach, confident in their superiority. They had seen this same scenario play out on hundreds of worlds. The primitive species would fire a few desperate shots. Their weapons would bounce harmlessly off Vulcan shields, and then the slaughter would begin. Supreme Admiral Thakmer studied the readings from his sensors. Their orbital stations are not even powering weapons. Are they planning to surrender without a fight? It appears so, Supreme Admiral, replied his tactical officer. We detect no military preparations of any kind. Disappointing, Thakmer muttered. I was hoping for at least some resistance to make this interesting. The fleet reached the point where Earth's moon filled their viewports. The Vulcans had learned to use moons as weapons platforms, turning them into forward bases for planetary bombardment. They expected the humans to attempt the same primitive strategy. Instead, the moon exploded into light and fire. Hidden launch bays that had been disguised as research stations opened across the lunar surface. Weapons that had appeared to be mining equipment revealed their true nature, sending streams of superheated plasma and kinetic projectiles directly into the alien formation. What is this? Thakmer roared as his flagship shuddered under the impact of weapons that should not exist on such a primitive world. The answer came in the form of more surprises. Throughout the asteroid belt, mining ships suddenly shed their false outer hulls to reveal military-grade armor and weapon systems. What the Vulcans had dismissed as harmless industrial equipment transformed into a fleet of heavily armed battleships. Impossible, screamed War Commander Vextel, as explosion after explosion rocked the Vulcan fleet. Their technology readings showed primitive chemical rockets and basic electronics. Captain Omin spoke through the communication system that connected every human installation in the solar system. Welcome to Earth's solar system. This is humanity's response to your ultimatum. The space around Earth's moon became a killing field. Weapons that the Vulcans had never seen before tore through their ships like paper. Railgun projectiles moving at significant fractions of light speed punched through holes designed to withstand planet-cracking weapons. Energy beams focused through crystalline arrays that had been disguised as communication satellites sliced entire ships in half. Retreat, Thakmer ordered, but it was too late. The human weapons had been positioned to create a perfect trap. Every escape route was covered by hidden gun emplacements. Lieutenant Colonel Yang Bo, commanding the disguised fleet in the asteroid belt, coordinated the attack with precision that stunned the aliens. Strike Team Alpha, target their command ships. Strike Team Bravo, disable their engines. No one leaves this system. Within the first 10 minutes of battle, a third of the Vulcan invasion fleet was floating debris. Ships that had conquered entire star systems were being destroyed by weapons that appeared to have been built from mining equipment and research tools. How? Thakmer whispered as another wave of human ships emerged from behind Earth's moon. These were not the crude vessels his scouts had reported. They were sleek, deadly warships that moved with the grace of predators. Sir, his tactical officer reported, his voice shaking, their weapons are more advanced than anything in our database. These are not primitive chemical rockets. These are weapons designed specifically to kill our ships. Supreme Admiral Thak finally understood the magnitude of his error. The humans had not been caught unprepared. They had been waiting. The emergency signal reached the Vulcan Empire's central command within hours of the disaster at Earth. High Command could barely believe the reports. An entire invasion fleet destroyed by a species they had dismissed as primitive cave dwellers. Supreme War Marshal Kethfer immediately ordered massive reinforcements from 12 different star systems. Impossible, he growled at his assembled generals. 300 ships destroyed by mining equipment and research stations. Someone made an error in the reports. Sir, we have confirmation from multiple sources, reported General Zacton. The human world was heavily fortified. They were prepared for our arrival. Then we will send enough ships to turn their entire solar system into dust, Kethfer declared. Gather the 2nd, 5th, and 9th battle fleets. 2,000 ships, moving toward that primitive world within the day. What the Vulcan High Command did not know was that their communications had been intercepted. For years, human intelligence ships disguised as harmless exploration vessels had been mapping every Vulcan installation, recording every transmission, and learning every detail of the Empire's military structure, deep in the Seoul Defense Command Center. Fleet Admiral Namjung studied the holographic display showing Vulcan fleet movements across 6 different star systems. The aliens were doing exactly what humanity's military planners had predicted they would do, responding to defeat with overwhelming force. They're pulling ships from the Kepler Station fuel depot, the Vega shipyards, and their main communication hub at Wolf 359, reported intelligence officer Kim Min. Just as we hoped they would. Admiral Nam smiled coldly. Then it's time to show them why dividing your forces is a mistake when fighting an enemy that has been planning this war for decades. Operation Thunder had been designed for this exact moment. While the Vulcans focused their attention on Earth, human strike forces would attack the Empire's most vital installations simultaneously. Ships that had been traveling through Vulcan space for years, as innocent traders and explorers would reveal their true nature. Captain Yuhei commanded one of these disguised vessels near the Kepler Station fuel depot. For 3 years, her ship had delivered supplies to various worlds while secretly mapping Vulcan defenses. The aliens had grown so used to seeing human ships that they barely noticed them anymore. All systems ready, reported her weapons officer, Lieutenant Beisu. The fuel depot's shields are down for routine maintenance, just as our intelligence predicted. Begin the attack, Yuhei ordered. The peaceful trader, which had appeared to be nothing more than a cargo vessel, suddenly revealed rows of hidden weapons. Plasma cannons that had been disguised as cargo containers opened fire on the massive fuel depot that supplied the Vulcan war machine across 3 star systems. The facility, which had been considered completely safe due to its location, deep within Vulcan territory, became an expanding ball of superheated gas within minutes. The explosion was so massive that it could be seen from neighboring star systems, that at the same time, similar attacks were taking place across Vulcan space. Major Lim Da led the assault on the Empire's primary shipyards at Vega, where dozens of new warships were under construction. Her team of engineers, who had been working as technical consultants at the facility for months, activated hidden explosives at key structural points. Charges detonated, she reported through her encrypted communicator. The shipyards are gone. The Vulcans just lost their ability to replace the ships we're destroying. Lieutenant Commander Park Jin systematically eliminated the Empire's long-range communication network. His small fleet of ships, disguised as a research expedition studying ancient star formations, struck at communication relays throughout the sector. Within hours, the scattered Vulcan fleets found themselves blind and unable to coordinate their movements. Back on Earth, Admiral Namjoon watched the reports flood in from across the galaxy. Every target was being hit exactly on schedule. The Vulcans, who had ruled through superior numbers and overwhelming force, were discovering what happened when they faced an enemy that fought with intelligence and preparation instead of brute strength. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the Vulcan reinforcement fleets, reported Communications Officer Lee Sol. They're demanding to know what's happening to their installations. Put it through, Nam ordered. The face of Supreme War Marshal Kethver appeared on the screen, his 4 eyes wide with shock and rage. What have you done? Our fuel depot at Kepler is destroyed. Our shipyards are gone. Our communication network is down. We're showing you the price of threatening Earth. Nam replied calmly. Your empire made a fundamental error. You assumed that because we appeared peaceful, we were weak. Impossible. You're a primitive species that barely learned space travel. We're a species that learned warfare thousands of years before we learned to fly. Nam corrected. We've been studying your empire for decades. We know the location of every installation, every supply route, every weakness in your defenses. Kethver's face contorted with fury. You cannot defeat an empire that spans half the galaxy. We're not trying to conquer your empire, Nam said. We're dismantling it. Every world you've enslaved is about to learn that their oppressors are not as powerful as they claimed. As if to prove his point, reports began flooding Vulcan communication channels from across their territory. Enslaved species were rising up as news of the Empire's defeat spread. Worlds that had been conquered centuries ago were declaring their independence. The Vulcan Empire, which had seemed invincible just days before, was crumbling as subject worlds realized their masters could be defeated. 6 months after the first shot was fired, the galaxy had changed forever. The Vulcan Empire, which had ruled with an iron fist for over 3,000 years, existed now only in history books and the nightmares of its former victims. Supreme Admiral Thakmar sat in chains aboard the human vessel Justice, staring at the walls of his prison cell and wondering how everything had gone so wrong in what had once been the Imperial throne room on the Valkan capital world. Representatives from 47 liberated species gathered for the first meeting of the Galactic Liberation Council. The massive chamber, which had once echoed with the screams of conquered peoples, now buzzed with the excited voices of free beings planning their future. Fleet Admiral Namjun stood at the center of the room, looking out at the diverse crowd of aliens who had traveled from across the galaxy to be here. There were the blue-skinned Kelthari, whose entire species had been enslaved for mining operations, the insect-like Mordok, who had been forced to build Valkan weapons, the crystalline Vishtar, whose advanced technology had been stolen and used against other worlds. Friends, Nam began, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber through translation devices. We gather today not as conquerors, but as liberators. Humanity did not seek this war. We would have been happy to explore the stars in peace, learning from other species and sharing our knowledge. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Many of these species had been contacted by human exploration ships over the years, and all remembered the humans as curious but peaceful visitors. But the Valkans made a critical mistake, Nam continued. They confused our desire for peace with weakness. They thought that because we did not immediately reveal our weapons, we had no weapons to reveal. Dr. Kim Sora, now serving as Earth's chief scientist and advisor to the Council, stepped forward. Humanity learned long ago that the best way to ensure peace is to be prepared for war. We spent 50 years building defenses while hoping we would never need to use them. The crowd listened intently as she explained how humanity had hidden their military preparations behind a facade of scientific research and peaceful exploration, how every mining ship had been a disguised warship, every research station a hidden fortress, every communication satellite part of an integrated weapons network. We studied the Valkan Empire for decades, Kim continued. We learned their tactics, their technology, their weaknesses. When they finally threatened Earth, we were ready. An elderly Kelthari representative raised his hand. But why help us? Your world is safe now. The Valkans are defeated. You could have simply protected yourselves. President Lee Min-Earth's diplomatic representative answered this question. Because freedom is not something that should belong to only one species. The Valkans enslaved entire civilizations, destroyed cultures, and treated thinking beings like property. We could not stand by and watch that continue. The truth was more complex than Lee was saying. Humanity's leaders had realized that leaving the Valkan Empire intact, even if weakened, would only lead to future conflicts. Better to destroy the entire system of oppression and create something new in its place. What happens now? Asked a Mordok delegate, his compound eyes reflecting the light from the chamber's massive windows. Now you are free to choose. Nam replied. Each world, each species, each individual can decide their own path. Humanity will not replace the Valkans as your rulers. We will not demand tribute or force you to follow our laws. But, added Dr. Kim, we also will not allow any species to rebuild what the Valkans created. The galaxy has seen enough empires built on conquest and slavery. As if summoned by her words, a holographic display activated in the center of the chamber. It showed a map of the galaxy, with thousands of worlds marked in different colors. Green worlds were free and independent. Red worlds were still under the control of various oppressive regimes. Yellow worlds were in transition, their people deciding what kind of government they wanted. There are still tyrants in the galaxy, Nam explained. Species that learned from the Valkans and built their own empires of oppression. They are watching what happened here, and some of them are planning to fill the vacuum left by the Valkan collapse. The chamber fell silent. Many of the representatives had hoped that the defeat of the Valkans would bring lasting peace to the galaxy. So what do we do? Asked a Vishtar representative, her crystalline form chiming softly as she spoke. President Lee Min's expression grew serious. We make sure that no species ever again has to fear conquest by a stronger neighbor. We create an alliance of free worlds that can defend themselves and help others who cannot. And if someone threatens innocent worlds, asked the Kelthari elder. Nam. Chen's smile was cold and hard. Then they will learn the same lesson the Valkans learned. Peaceful species can be the most dangerous when they are pushed too far. As the representatives discussed the formation of the new galactic government, former Supreme Admiral Thakmar was brought into the chamber in chains. He looked around at the faces of beings whose species he had helped enslave, and finally understood the true cost of his empire's cruelty. You have created chaos, he said to Namjin. Without the empire to maintain order, the galaxy will fall into war. Perhaps, Nam replied, but it will be a galaxy where every species has the right to choose their own path, and that is worth any price.